Welcome to Ponytails and Pep Talks, the podcast where blowouts, breakdowns, and breakthroughs are a weekly discussion. I'm your host, ReJeania. For over 3 decades, I've been behind the salon chair as a stylist, an owner, and yes, your favorite unlicensed therapist. I have heard it all. The tears, the triumphs, the you won't believe what just happened stories from courageous women overcoming incredible obstacles. So let's meet one of them right now on Ponytails and Pep Talks. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ponytails and Pep Talks. I'm your host, ReJeania. You have a story. Let's hear that again. You have a story. Now, you might be wondering what that was or what that is. 4 simple words. You have a story. And I can imagine that in your mind, after hearing that, a particular chapter just popped in your head. I think our life kind of plays out in chapters. Sometimes it's very quick chapters. They start and close. Sometimes some chapters last through several seasons. And then sometimes there's just that thread that is pulled through from one chapter to the next. Let's talk about stories. For generations, people have passed down stories, cultures pass down stories so that we can learn about our ancestors, about what they did, where they went, what they ate, anything that you can tell each other about your family. How about a family reunion? Have you gone to those family reunions and you're walking around and you see these names, Ken and Kathy Smith, and they mean absolutely nothing to you until Uncle Jack walks over and he starts laughing. He goes, "Oh, do I have a story to tell you about those two?" Ken was 6'4". Kathy was 4'11". And back then we couldn't see pictures instantly. So all the pictures that were taken of Ken and Kathy, either his head was cut off or her head was cut off. There was no happy medium there. Now your mind is starting to form a picture. And then Uncle Jack goes on to tell you, they had the best picnics. You know what? Even one time, Ken got honorary police chief for the day. Now you're connected. Now you're invested. And now you have a story to pass on to your children. How many of you watch Shark Tank? When you are watching Shark Tank, these presenters come out and tell you their stories. Their stories is what caused them to invent something that made their life easier, that made sense to them, and they're hoping that it's going to make sense to you and that you will want to purchase their dream, their invention, something that came out of necessity for them. And you know what? We listen to the stories and we're like, I might need that. I mean, how many of us never knew that we needed a little scrunchie with a smiley face to wash our dishes with, right? Exactly. For a couple of years, I was over all the fun stuff in my HOA. So my team and I put together a progressive dinner. If you don't know what that is, it's an event where you all go to one person's house and you have coffee and snacks. You go to the next person's house and then you have the full dinner. Then you go to the next person's house and have dessert and drinks. I was looking on Pinterest to find a really cool idea or game that we could do or play. In there, I found where you could take postcards and I put it in them in every house. And I instructed them that on this postcard, you write out some kind of event or story in your life that no one would believe of you. do not sign your name. At the end of the night, we pulled these cards out and I began to read the stories. Everyone became so invested because the stories were so fascinating. And then, of course, we had to guess who the story belonged to. We spent hours reading through these answers that people had put on there. But then the fun part is when we found out who that person was that got to tell their story about the event. We found out that one of our neighbors had been a stunt double for John Wayne in the movies. We had found out someone had gotten kicked out of school for having alcohol on a bus trip. We found out that someone else had come up with an invention. We found out that someone else had had dinner with a movie star. But what did all of that do? That connected us as people. It brought about imagination and things and seeing them in a completely different light. Those stories showed us, the lives into the lives of the people that are around us every day. We built better connections and it was so much fun. So be curious about others around you. You never know what story that they may have. You may find out stories that would impress you, that would surprise you, that would cause you to have empathy for them and maybe see a little bit into how they had their success made. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking with a client, and anyone that knows me knows that I am a girl that loves to fish, and I love to be at the lake, and I love the water, and I love the sun. So I was mentioning to her that I was having fishing fever. The weather was changing, and it was time to get out that fishing pole and go fishing. And she looked at me and was like, "Really? Like, you really do like to fish? Wow." And at that time, I just laughed. I just laughed. I said, because it's fun. I enjoy it. And we went on with fixing her hair. And so over the next few days, though, I really couldn't get that question out of my mind. And I thought, why do I love to fish? So much. Let's step into one of those stories that have the thread that follows through your life. When I look back, some of the very happiest moments of my young childhood is spent fishing, being on the lake. My grandparents owned property right on the water. He had a deck that walked right out, and we had this, or he had this big houseboat to enjoy. Now, as children, we thought that was the most beautiful houseboat and the beautiful deck you've ever seen. As an adult, you realize that, yeah, that deck was built out of repurposed wood and the houseboat was about 30 years old. But you know what? It really didn't matter. As kids, we had joy, we had peace, it was calm. I loved getting up early in the mornings and seeing the steam rise up off the water and hearing the engines start all down through the neighborhood. And back then, the smell of the engines ready to go. One of the things that my brothers and I would do was take our little Zebco fishing rods and we would go to the end of the deck and we would catch all kinds of little brown and, little sun perch and whatever we could. I recall if I could find the picture one day of all of these fish laying out across the dock right there, probably 20 fish, or so. But what we really enjoyed is that we caught them, but what we got to do was go out with Grandpa and put that bait on the trot line and then wait for the bigger fish to come, the big, juicy catfish. So we would take turns going out and checking these trot lines with Grandpa. And whenever we would bring all the fish back, then we would get out the French fries and cut all the fish up and have dinner that night, which is what you're supposed to do with things that you catch. Really cool thing is that last year, my dad happened to tell me, he said, "You know what? I still have your little fishing pole that you used to fish with." So I wanted to show that to you today because I really do have it. And this was from a young child. So this is precious to me because it comes with amazing stories, beautiful stories that went through, my life, that put a passion in my life. That was just one of many years of memories. Fast forward to the week after my wedding, my then husband and my brother, we all went fishing. My then husband had gotten a new reel and was having a lot of problems with it. So we're out there fishing, and he sent the rod back to get ready to cast, and the reel released. And when it did, it landed smack dab right in the top of my head here. Now, it was a broken lure, a split lure, as you would call it. It had 3 prongs on each side. 2 of those prongs from each side buried itself very deeply into the top of my head. I had the cutest little lure barrette that you've ever seen. And it probably would have worked, except for the fact that the blood pouring down my face wasn't so attractive. We couldn't get them out. So we ended up having to go to the emergency room, which was like 45 minutes away. We get to the emergency room and it's completely packed out. So we sitting there, and we actually happened to see some people that we knew. And when they realized what was happening and that I had this fish barrette and or lure barrette in my head, they started making the jokes, which was great at the time. I wasn't in a lot of pain. They started telling me, "Well, I guess you fell for him hook, line, and sinker, right?" And then if they saw him in town, they would say, "So, how's your mermaid that you caught doing?" And that brought back a memory from 40 years ago, but it was a story and it was a memory. And stories leave an imprint in our mind. How about the fish tales of how big that your fish are? Think about, we laugh when people start talking about the size of their fish. There's always some doubt in your mind whether that's actually the size of the fish or not. Usually not. But what is it that causes us to expand on the size of that fish? And I want to show you a different perspective on that. The fish may have only been this big, but you know what? The loved ones that you were fishing with today adds a little bit to it. The beautiful sunshine adds a little bit more to it. The laughter, the happiness, the joy adds a little bit more to it. And how about all those amazing snacks from Becky's? Just adds a little bit more. So I'd like for you to see sometimes that when someone is telling you their fish story, and they might be exaggerating, but in their mind, this is the story that happened to them today. Fish may have only been this big, but the story of what happened that day, the way they felt that day, makes the fish this big. However, what if all the memories are not that great? What if they're not all that happy? In my past relationship, we went fishing a lot, involved in the fishing world. However, now these fishing trips and events are very tainted because of a broken trust. Don't let anyone steal your passion, no matter what. My childhood chapter is closed. My relationship chapters are now closed. But what I pulled from that was a thread that continues to go through my life. And you know what? I'm going to take that thread of that passion of something I enjoy, And I'll just bring it over here to the next chapter and let's see what happens with that. Let's talk about those chapters of serious struggles, addictions, divorce, losing a loved one, financial destruction. What do we do with those chapters? Have you ever thought when you were going through something that no one could understand you or what you were going through? And then was there that person that you never thought that they had had something like that happen in their life, but they open up to you and they start telling you about their experience with exactly what you're going through? You know what happens? Man, you feel connected. You actually feel understood. You you immediately feel relaxed and relief that, you know, I'm not the only one. So never be ashamed to share the ugly chapters. Stop hiding them. You never know. The story that you tell someone could be the story that literally saves their life. Now let's say it again. You have a story. What are you going to do with that story? This is one of the reasons that I started Ponytails and Pep Talks. I wanted to have a place where women can share those stories so that we can see that others have gone through some of the similar things and that they made it through to the other side. And to definitely know that you're not alone through encouragement and inspiration and hearts that reach out to you. Do you have a story to share? I would love to hear it. If you would, leave me something in the comment about your story. Really love you guys, and I will see you next week.